Today we are going to be talking about certain problems that can arise in research, and then we're also going to be talking about solutions to those problems. The first problem that I would like to talk to you about is something known as the Hawthorne effect. Now the information that's in bold is the definition. So the Hawthorne effect is the effect researchers have on their subjects. And let me go ahead and explain the experiment to you before I get into the conclusion. So what happened was in 1939, there were a group of researchers who were studying industrial productivity. So in other words, how much were people that worked in a factory able to produce? And this happened in Hawthorne, Illinois, which is where, of course, this effect got its name. And what happened was the researchers, the variable that they were changing to see what effect it would have on worker productivity is they were changing the amount of lighting and whether or not the worker got breaks. And so those were the independent variables. The dependent variable would, of course, be did productivity change? Now, what they found is that no matter what they changed, no matter how long the break or lighting, things like that, productivity changed every single time with every single independent variable. And so the researchers realized that the participants, because the participants knew they were being studied, they actually worked harder to show off to the researchers, and therefore productivity increased. So just because they were being watched, they worked harder. So going back up to our bullet up here, says that this experiment showed the results did not depend on the independent variable. It was caused by the workers' belief that they were special because they were participants in an experiment. So, in other words, it's better to perform something like naturalistic observation so that the participants are unaware and don't change their behavior because they know that they're being watched. That's just one example. Next, there's something called the placebo effect. I'm sure that you have heard this term. The placebo effect is a change in condition resulting from the subject believing the treatment will have an effect rather than from the actual treatment. So an example I'm going to give you is researchers have done particular studies in which they have given participants what the participants believe to be an alcoholic beverage, let's say something like non-alcoholic beer, and the participants have drank this beverage, which they believed to contain alcohol, and then the participants started acting without inhibition. So in other words, they started displaying signs of drunkenness, even though in reality they had not consumed any alcohol. And so this is showing that because the participants believed that they were getting alcohol, then their behavior actually changed even though the treatment not the treatment in that case, but the alcohol didn't actually have an effect because they didn't consume any alcohol. That's just one example. Another example is, let's say there are subjects that have Alzheimer's disease. This is something that affects some older people in the population, and it's when their mental state deteriorates. So let's say they're participating in a test to see if this new drug will improve their memory. Now the researchers are going to divide the participants into two groups. One group is going to take the memory drug. They're going to be the experimental group. The other group is going to get a sugar pill. They're not going to be told it's a sugar pill. They're going to believe it's the memory drug that everyone else is taking to see if it has an effect on their memory. The placebo effect is going to show that both groups, after being tested for memory improvement, are going to improve even though only one group took the medication. So this just shows the power of the mind in bringing about change. Just because a person believes that it could change, they do change. All right, the next problem in research that we're going to discuss is the experimenter effect, and this is also known as self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is the tendency of a researcher's expectations for a study to unintentionally influence their behavior and therefore influence the participants' behavior and then ultimately change the results of the study. So, for example, because a researcher is expecting to see a change, like improvements in memory, which we'll get to in the example on the next slide, then they might use a different tone of voice when asking the memory questions. They might act friendlier toward the person. They might act happier. They might make more eye contact, show more attention to the person. So the experimenter is changing the way they're acting biased because they expect the drug to have an effect. They're treating the subjects differently. So here's that sample study that we discussed continued. So like I said, after they participate in this study, then the groups are going to take another memory test. So an example of the experimenter effect is the researcher giving clues to the participants about how they were supposed to respond with their body language, tone of voice, eye contact. And something to note is that this could be unintentional. It's not necessarily deliberate, but it does happen. So then on the flip side, the participant is going to notice that the researcher is paying a lot of attention to him. So he's going to get this feeling that, I should have improved a lot in this study. So then they're going to try harder on the memory test, and any improvement in their memory is going to be because of their own effort, not because of the drug. All right. Now, this is another example of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Basically, because this is all about the idea that because a person expects someone to act one way, then they start to see the person acting in that way. So another example, this is about work behavior. So um, the boss is assuming that this worker, Lacey, is lazy, never takes initiative, and then Lacey's behavior, or excuse me, the supervisor's behavior says, I'm going to check up on her constantly because I don't think she can handle working on her own. And then Lacey, her perception is going to be, my boss is always checking up on me. So the employee is going to assume, so Lacey is going to assume he doesn't think I can do anything. He must not think I'm capable. So then Lacey's going to avoid the boss and wait for him to tell her what to do. And then the boss is going to see he's right. Lacey doesn't show any initiative. So in other words, he's just collecting evidence that supports his case. Another example, and this doesn't happen at Pine Lake, but in a previous school where I was at, the teachers, when they got their new class rosters at the beginning of the year, they would go to the former teachers of these students and they would say, okay, now tell me, who are the good ones, who are the bad ones, things like that. So the reason, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I don't do that, but specifically I don't do that because I don't want to unintentionally treat someone different because of the experience that they had in someone else's class. I want to give everybody a chance and give everybody the chance to start with a fresh slate. So that's another example. All right, so there are solutions to these research problems. And the solution, as you can tell by the little cartoon, is going to relate to blinding. Now that sounds odd, but you'll understand in a minute. Blinding helps to avoid influencing the results. So in a single blind experiment, the participant doesn't know if they're in the experimental group or the control group. They don't know if they're taking the sugar pill. They don't know if they're getting the injection of salt water or if they're getting the actual medications. They're not told which group they're in. So we can see this in this cartoon. So the experimenter knows which group they're in, but the participant doesn't know. In the double-blind experiment, that means that both the researcher and the participant does not know if the participants are in the experimental group or are in the control group. So they're both blind, double-blind. And of course, someone knows. The person overseeing the research is going to know, but the researchers that are working one-on-one with the participants do not know if they're giving that memory test to the person that is actually taking the memory pill or if they're giving the memory test to someone taking the sugar pill. Alright, so the last thing is I want you to read through these 3 scenarios. Some of them are going to be a review of what we learned in the lesson, the exact scenario, and identify which problem is research is being exemplified in the scenario. So your choices, you have the experimenter effect, you have the placebo effect, and you have the Hawthorne effect. So go ahead and take a moment, and then once you've done that, you can pause it, read these over, and then you can check your answers on the key. And then, of course, after you've read through the scenarios and identified them, go ahead and take a moment and check your answers with the solution. So I'm about to change to the solution. So the key: scenario A is the Hawthorne effect, scenario B is the placebo effect, and scenario C is experimental expectancy, also known as self-fulfilling prophecy. Tomorrow we will be doing some activities where we show these different effects in action.